The woman had been screaming for 11 minutes straight. Kay knew because she'd been watching the clock above the nurse's station, the way she always did when she was deciding whether to get involved. 11 minutes of, "Do you know who my husband is?" Directed at Nurse Park, 23 years old, 4 months into her first hospital job, and now visibly shaking behind the reception desk. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration. You understand nothing." The woman's voice cut across the entire waiting room. Designer coat, diamond earrings the size of small planets, and a fury that had nothing to do with wait times and everything to do with power. "I have been sitting here for 40 minutes. Do you have any idea what my husband's foundation donated to this hospital last year?" Kay set down her chart and walked forward, slowly, the way her mother had taught her. Never rush toward conflict. Let them see you coming. "Mrs. Choi." Kay's voice was quiet. That was the first thing people never expected. They always anticipated a fight. Kay never gave them one. "I'll take it from here." The woman turned. She looked Kay up and down the way certain people did the full scan, top to bottom, measuring and dismissing in one motion. "And who are you?" "I'm the charge nurse." Kay folded her hands in front of her. "And I need you to hear me very clearly right now, because I'm only going to say this once. Your husband's foundation is deeply appreciated. It helped us purchase 2 new ventilators last spring. Those ventilators have saved 9 lives since then." She paused. "But those ventilators do not give you a faster heartbeat. They do not move you up the triage list. And they do not give you the right to terrorize my staff." The waiting room had gone completely silent. Mrs. Choi's face flushed a deep red. "I want to speak to your supervisor. My supervisor is in the middle of a trauma. When she's done saving someone's life, I'll let her know you asked." Kay tilted her head. "Now, you can sit down and wait your turn like every other person in this room, or you can leave and seek treatment at another facility. But what you will not do," her voice dropped just slightly, just enough, "is speak to my nurses like that again. Are we clear?" The silence stretched 5 full seconds. Mrs. Choi sat down. Nurse Park exhaled so hard she nearly fell forward. Kay turned, gave her one firm nod, "You're fine, keep moving," and walked back toward the corridor. Kay turned to leave, already done with it. And that's when the night stopped being normal. And before you judge what's about to happen, just know this didn't start with a fight. It started with a nurse who refused to stay silent, in a room full of people who thought they were untouchable. So subscribe, and stay with me, because everything changes the moment those doors open. Kay was halfway to the trauma bay when the doors exploded open. Not the normal burst of an incoming gurney. This was different. This was the kind of entrance that changed the air pressure in a room. And everyone in that room felt it before they understood it. 6 men in black suits moving in tight formation, weapons visible at their hips, faces carved from something harder than stone. People scrambled. Someone screamed. A child started crying somewhere near the vending machines. And in the center of it all, being carried on a stretcher by 2 of those suited men, was an older Korean man. Expensive clothes soaked through with blood. Breathing, but barely. Behind the stretcher, controlling the entire energy of the group without saying a single word, was him. Kay had worked emergency medicine for 6 years. She had seen grief, rage, fear, denial, every version of what a person became when someone they loved was dying. But she had never seen anything quite like John Siwon. He was 34. Built like someone who had grown up carrying weight, not just physically, but in every sense of the word. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that moved constantly, cataloging everything in the room within seconds of entering it. The men around him watched his hands more than his face, which told Kay everything she needed to know about the kind of man he was. Right now, those hands were shaking. Just barely. Just enough that she noticed. "We need a doctor. Now." His voice came out low and controlled, but underneath it was something raw and barely leashed. "My father. He's been shot. 2 rounds, left side. It's been 20 minutes. Get the weapons out of my ER." Kay was already moving toward the stretcher, already assessing entry wound, exit wound, blood pressure by the color of the man's lips, airway by the sound of his breathing. All of you. Weapons down or weapons out. I don't care which. These men stay. I'm not negotiating with you. She looked up from the stretcher and met his eyes directly. She felt the full weight of what he was. She wasn't naive. The suits alone told a story, and the way every person in that lobby had cleared a path said the rest. She felt it, and she held his gaze anyway. You have two options, Kay said. Put the weapons away, and I save your father. Or keep arguing and watch him die right here. She pressed 2 fingers to the older man's wrist. His blood pressure is dropping. You have about 30 seconds to decide. Something moved across Siwen's face. Not anger. Something more complicated than anger. He raised one hand. A single gesture. 6 weapons disappeared. Good. Kay was already moving. Let's go. What happened in the next 40 minutes, John Siwen would never fully be able to explain to anyone who asked. He stood on the other side of the trauma bay glass and watched a 28-year-old nurse take command of a room full of doctors and residents the way he took command of a boardroom. Quietly. Completely. Without a single wasted word or movement. She called for equipment before the doctors finished asking for it. She moved around the table like she already knew where everyone was going to be. When one of the residents started to panic, visible even through the glass, hands fumbling, voice climbing, she said 2 words to him and his hands steadied. Siwen had spent his entire life reading people. It was how he had survived. His father, John Hagen, had built their organization from nothing, started in the back corridors of Incheon with nothing but nerve and a ruthlessness that became legend, then expanded across borders until the John name meant something that made powerful men go quiet when they heard it. He had raised Siwen the same way he had built everything else, without softness, without shortcuts. By 26, Siwen had taken over operations. By 30, there was no one in their world who didn't know his name. He had negotiated with politicians and buried enemies and sat across tables from men twice his age who were twice as afraid of him as they led on. He had never once, in all of that, stood at a glass window and felt the entire world narrow down to a single person on the other side of it. Until now. Hagen had taken 2 bullets at a dinner that was supposed to be routine, a message from a rival faction that had been getting bolder for months. Siwen had stepped away from the table for 4 minutes. For minutes, and by the time he came back, the shots had been fired and his father was on the floor, and there was only one thought left in his head. Get him there alive. Now he stood at the glass, and somewhere underneath the fear and the fury, something he hadn't felt in years moved through him quietly. Calm. His second-in-command, Min Jae-ho, appeared at his shoulder. Boss. We should post men at the perimeter. If whoever did this followed. They didn't follow us. Siwen didn't move his eyes from the trauma bay. If they had, we'd already know. A pause. Who is she? Jae-ho followed his gaze. The nurse. Siwen said nothing, which was answer enough. I'll find out. Inside the trauma bay, Kay stepped back from the table, stripped her gloves, and looked at the monitor. Steady. Not strong yet, but steady. She said something to the lead doctor, who nodded, and then she looked up, directly through the glass, directly at Siwen, and gave him one single nod. He exhaled for the first time in 40 minutes. John Hagen was moved to a private room before midnight. Siwen had requested, which in his language meant arranged, and in his world meant demanded, the quietest floor in the hospital, a corner room, and round-the-clock monitoring. The hospital administrator had agreed to all 3 in under 4 minutes, which was either a testament to Siwen's persuasion or the 2 men standing behind him while he made the request. Probably both. Kay finished her shift at 1 in the morning. She was pulling on her jacket at her locker when she turned around and found Siwen standing in the corridor outside the staff room. She stared at him. How did you get back here? I asked. You asked. She looked past him at the empty hallway, then back at him. Where's your security detail? Nearby. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It isn't. He held out a paper bag. The smell hit her before she could process what was happening, her mother's recipe, her childhood. The specific combination of jollof rice and fried plantain from the one Ghanaian restaurant 3 neighborhoods over that she ordered from on her worst shifts and her best ones equally. You haven't eaten since before your shift started. Kay did not take the bag. How do you know what I eat? I pay attention. You've known me for 6 hours. 4, technically. You went on shift at 9. He set the bag down on the bench beside her without pushing it toward her, which she noticed. Not forcing. Just placing. My father is alive because of you. I don't take that lightly. She studied him for a long moment. The corridor was quiet, fluorescent and still, and up close he looked less like what he'd been in the lobby, less like a force of nature, and more like a man who was exhausted and relieved and trying very hard not to show either. He's not out of the woods, she said finally. The next 48 hours matter. He needs rest, no stress, and absolutely no. She looked pointedly at the invisible army she knew was stationed somewhere on this floor. Work conversations. Something close to amusement crossed his face. I'll pass that along. You'll do more than pass it along. She picked up the bag. The smell was incredible, and she was absolutely starving, and she refused to give him the satisfaction of showing it. Good night, Mr. John. Cywin. She was already walking. She didn't look back. Good night. Behind her, she heard nothing. No footsteps, no response. Just silence, which somehow felt louder than anything he could have said. Day 3, he was back. Kay came out of a consult at 7 in the evening to find a tray sitting at the nurse's station with a handwritten note beneath it. The tray held coffee, not the hospital's, real coffee, from the place 4 blocks away that had a 40-minute wait on weekends, and a small container of the kind of fruit she had mentioned offhandedly to Nurse Park 2 days ago, not even in a real conversation, just a passing comment about how she never had time to eat properly. The note said, "The cafeteria is an insult to everything you do." Nurse Park was staring at the tray with enormous eyes. Kay. Who is? Don't. Kay picked up the coffee. It was exactly how she took it. Not a word. She drank it anyway. Day 5. She was crossing the lobby at 3 in the morning after covering a colleague's emergency shift when the black car parked at the curb caught her attention. Not because it was unusual. The John security detail had become a familiar fixture on the floor, but because the back window was down and Cywin was sitting inside, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking at his phone with the particular exhaustion of a man who had not slept properly in days. She walked to the car and knocked on the roof. He looked up. "Why are you still here?" she asked. "Visiting hours ended 6 hours ago." "I'm not visiting. I'm working." From a parked car outside a hospital at 3 in the morning. It's a good location. Quiet. Kay looked at him for a long moment. He looked back. There was something about the way he did that, not staring, not performing, just looking, like she was the most straightforward thing in a world full of complications, that she found deeply inconvenient. "Your father needs to see you calm," she said. "He can't do that if you look like you haven't slept since he was admitted." "I sleep." "When?" He said nothing. "Go home, Cywin." She said his name before she realized she was doing it, and they both noticed. "Sleep in an actual bed. Your father will still be here in the morning." He was quiet for a moment. Then, very quietly, "Will you?" She held his gaze. Didn't flinch from it, didn't soften toward it. Just held it. "Good night," she said, and walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat for a full minute before she started the engine. Day 7, he walked into the hospital at noon with 2 of his men and asked the front desk for a tutorial on monitoring post-operative vitals at home. The front desk called Kay. Kay came down, looked at him standing there in a charcoal suit looking entirely too composed for a man who was asking a question any second-year medical student could answer, and said, "Follow me." She took him to a consultation room, sat him down, pulled up the monitoring equipment, explained everything he had asked about with complete professionalism for exactly 18 minutes while he sat across the small table and watched her with that steady, unhurried attention that she had stopped trying to ignore 3 days ago. When she finished, she folded her hands on the table. "You already know all of this." He didn't deny it. "You could have asked any nurse on the floor." You could have asked the doctor directly. You could have had someone Google it. She tilted her head. Siwin, your men are parked in the ambulance bay again. You're costing this hospital response time. His mouth curved. Just slightly. That rare, real thing she'd seen once before. I'll move them. And next time you want to see me, she said, standing, just say that. He stood too, and for a moment they were very close in the small room, and the air between them had a different quality to it than anything she'd experienced in a very long time. He was taller than she remembered from every other time she'd been near him, or maybe she was just noticing it now. Next time I want to see you, he said, low and careful, I'll just say that. She walked to the door. Put her hand on the frame. Good. She glanced back once. Move the cars, Siwin. He smiled. She left before it could do anything to her. It started with gratitude. Then it became a habit. And before Kay realized it, it had become something else entirely. She heard Ciola before she saw her. Kay was coming out of the supply corridor on the 4th floor, alone, chart in hand, when she heard heels clicking toward her from the far end of the hall with the particular rhythm of someone who wanted to be heard coming. She looked up. The woman was beautiful in the way that certain women weaponized beauty, every detail calculated, nothing accidental. Late 20s, Korean, in clothes that cost more than Kay's monthly rent, with eyes that had already completed the same head-to-toe assessment Mrs. Choi had attempted in the lobby 2 weeks ago. Except this one didn't look dismissive. She looked threatened, which was more dangerous. Because threatened people don't walk away. They escalate. You're the nurse, the woman said. Not a question. I'm a nurse, Kay said. There are several of us. It's a hospital. Don't. Ciola stopped 4 feet away. Don't do that. You know exactly who I am. Kay didn't, actually, but she was beginning to piece it together quickly. Yoon Ciola. The woman said her own name like it should mean something. Maybe in certain rooms it did. Siwin and I were engaged for 2 years. I know him in ways you haven't begun to imagine. And whatever you think is happening between you and him, she stepped closer, voice dropping to something sharp and intimate. You're a distraction. A novelty. He collects interesting things and then he puts them down. You're not his world. You're not even close to his world. You're a girl who saved his father and now he feels obligated. Kay was quiet through all of it. She let the woman finish completely. Then she said, Are you done? Ciola blinked. Because I have patience. Kay moved a step past her. Ciola's hand came up fast. Kay's wrist was faster. She caught it midair, fingers wrapping around Ciola's wrist with the calm, precise grip of someone who had been trained in exactly how much pressure was required and exactly where to apply it. The hallway went silent. Again. Ciola's breath caught. Kay leaned in, close enough that her voice wouldn't carry past the two of them. I save lives for a living, she said quietly. I know exactly where the human body hurts the most. I know every pressure point, every nerve cluster, every place where the pain is the kind that doesn't leave a mark. She held the woman's gaze without blinking. Don't test me. She released the wrist. Stepped back. Straightened her scrubs. Ciola was pale. Have a good afternoon, Kay said, and turned. Siwin was standing at the end of the hallway. She didn't know how long he had been there. Long enough. His face was completely still, which she had learned meant he was feeling something he wasn't ready to show. He looked at Ciola once, just once, the way you look at something you are finished with, and Ciola seemed to understand the full sentence in that single glance. She left without another word, heels clicking faster now, the rhythm different on the way out. Kay walked toward Siwin. He watched her come. You didn't step in, she said when she reached him. You didn't need me to. She searched his face. How long were you standing there? Long enough to know you didn't need me to, he said again. Then, quieter, Ciola will not come near you again. I've already made that clear. I made it fairly clear myself. You did. Something moved in his eyes. You always do. They stood in the corridor, the hospital moving around them, announcements over intercoms, wheels on linoleum, the distant rhythm of a place built for emergencies. And between them, something quiet and undeniable that neither of them was pretending wasn't there anymore. I owe you an apology, he said. She raised an eyebrow. The ambulance bay. His mouth curved. My men moved today. She laughed. It surprised her, the realness of it, the way it came out before she could shape it into something more composed. It surprised him too. She could see it in the way he looked at her, like the laugh was something he wanted to hold on to. He found her 3 days later at the end of her shift, waiting by her car in the parking structure. No men. No car. Just him, in a dark coat, hands in his pockets, looking in the early evening light like someone who had made a decision and arrived at the piece of it. I don't have an excuse this time, he said. I know. She stopped in front of him. I want to take you to dinner. He said it plainly, without performance, without the careful architecture he used in every other part of his life. A real dinner. Not tea I pretended was for you, not takeout at 3 in the morning, not a tutorial on equipment you know I don't need. His eyes were steady on hers. You're the first person in years who makes me want to stop. I don't know what to do with that. But I know I don't want to waste it on excuses. Kate looked at him for a long moment. She thought about what Ciola had said, a novelty, a distraction, not his world. She thought about her mother, who had loved a complicated man and built something real anyway. She thought about the way Siwen had stood at the trauma bay glass for 40 minutes, alone, with shaking hands, and the way he looked at her through it like she was the only fixed point in his sky. Friday, she said. Something in his face broke open, quiet and warm, and entirely unlike the man who had walked into her ER with half an army behind him. Friday. Don't send a car. She unlocked her door. Pick me up yourself. I will. He stepped back to let her in. Kay. She paused. Thank you. His voice was low. Not for my father. For, he stopped. Started again. For seeing me. Not what I am. Me. She held his gaze for one long moment in the fading light of the parking structure, and the thing she felt in her chest was warm and certain and a little terrifying, and she decided, for the first time in a long time, to let it be all three. Friday, Siwen. She drove home. She was smiling before she made it out of the parking structure, and she didn't try to stop it. She was ready by 7. Black dress, her mother's gold earrings, the specific kind of calm that came not from certainty, but from choice, from deciding to step towards something instead of away from it. She went to her locker first to grab her keys. Inside, sitting on top of her jacket, was a small object she had never seen before. Tarnished silver. A medical pin, old, worn at the edges, the kind they gave nurses at graduation 20, 30 years ago. She picked it up and her hands stilled because she recognized the inscription on the back. She knew those initials. She had traced them as a child on the pin her mother kept on her dresser, the pin from her own graduation, the pin Kay had held at the funeral and then never seen again because it had been lost in the clearing of the house, and she had grieved it quietly for years. Her mother's pin. There was a note tucked beneath it. Small, folded once. She opened it. He isn't the only one who has been watching you. No signature. No name. Kay stood in the empty locker room for a long moment, the pin in her palm, the note in her other hand, the sounds of the hospital pressing in from outside the door. Her pulse didn't spike. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that it stayed perfectly steady. She looked at the pin again, then at the note. Then she folded the note carefully, placed it in her pocket, pinned her mother's pin to the inside of her jacket lapel where no one could see it, and walked out. Siwen's car was at the curb. Not a driver. Him, standing outside it, coat on, looking up when she came through the doors with the same focused attention he had given her that very first night through the trauma bay glass. His expression shifted when he saw her. Not performed appreciation. Something real and unguarded that he didn't bother to conceal. You look, he started. I know, she said, and he laughed, quiet and genuine, and opened the car door for her. She got in. He came around to the driver's side. The city moved past the windows, all light and motion, and between them was warmth and possibility and the particular electricity of two people at the exact beginning of something. But in her pocket, the note sat still and cold. And somewhere in the city that moved past her window, someone who was not John Sywin knew her name, knew her mother, and had been watching long enough to know exactly what would make her afraid. She looked at Sywin's profile, steady, present, real, and made the choice that her mother had always told her was the bravest one. She let herself be here. Fully here, in this car, at this beginning, with this man. The rest could wait until tomorrow. Tonight was theirs. And here's the thing, Kay still got into that car. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she chose not to be. If this pulled you in, like and subscribe, because stories like this only get deeper. But tell me honestly, if you found that note waiting for you, would you still go on that date?